Good morning, Who Dat Nation, and happy Sunday, Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is doing well out there. I know we are because we cover the New Orleans Saints, and it's a good time to cover them, a good portion of the year. And with that, we'd like to welcome you to the Week 3 Bayou Blitz pregame show. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your hosts to your Bayou Blitz pregame show. Joining me to help break down today's matchup is my co-host, Brendan Boylan. Happy Week 3, Brendan.
It's Week 3. The Saints looking good. We have an answer. Remember, so for everybody that joined us with Delvin Bro, we ended the show not really knowing, or at least confidently knowing the last time the Saints started 3-0, which surprises me, because I figured we'd know that off the top of our heads because of the successful years the Saints had while not starting the year successfully. But it ended up being 2013. Bob texted me. I mean, quick as a hiccup. Bob texted me about 2 minutes after we get off and is gives me the last 20 years of Saints starts. And it was 2013. The Saints started 5-0, which I completely forgot about. That was that, I don't want to say anomaly year, but kind of wedged in between some really bad Saints years.
It was a sneaky playoff year. When you poll Saints fans about your favorite playoff teams or your best Saints teams of all time, 2013 never ever pops up on that list. Even with the older fans that go back, myself included, going back to the Dome Patrol, you talk about the 87 team, 91, 92 squads, obviously 2009, 2011, and then the run they had towards the end of Drew Brees' and Sean Payton's tenure with the team. 2013 always gets forgotten, and that was a pretty fun year too, where ironically they beat the Eagles in the first round of the playoffs, the franchise's first ever road playoff win. So the team accomplished some pretty historic things, including, as we said, being the last Saints team to go 3-0. And I can't believe this other statistic. This year's team starting 2-0, 2 consecutive years under Dennis Allen, having done so, is only the second time in the 58 years of this franchise history. Only 2 times have they started back-to-back years with a 2-0 record. That was just, and I included it in my article, yesterday about this morning about this. Excuse me. That's just one of those mind-boggling statistics.
Can I guess the other time?
Yeah,
and be horribly wrong, probably.
I think you'd probably be right.
It has to be 9 and 10, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that was the only one that made sense to me, is obviously the 13-0 starting in 09. And then 10, I don't have to bring up going on the road in the playoffs for that against a team with a losing record, but they had a successful year in 10 as well to at least get to the playoffs. So yeah, okay. That makes sense. But yeah, weird numbers, weird times. Shout out to 2013, just because they get forgotten about. But remember, that was also, this is another one, Bob. I'm just going to throw you Saints historian. Was that the last time the Saints had 2 players have double-digit sacks in the same season?
I'd
be willing to bet that was the last time, because it was Junior Gillette and Cam Jordan both hit double digits. So
and I mean, they had outstanding seasons. I am thinking that the year Trey had his Henderson had his breakout. I'd have to look it up, but it feels like Cam had 10 or 11 sacks that year too. I know Cam made the Pro Bowl and Trey didn't, which caused a lot of us to scratch our heads until we remembered the NFL Pro Bowl is obviously a popularity contest, and Trey wasn't there yet. If I were to guess, Trey and Cam had double-digit sack years. But if they didn't, then I got to believe the 2013 with Junior and Cam would have been the last time, since definitely the Dome Patrol did it a few times with Ricky Jackson and Pat Swilling. I am thinking that early 2000s Jim Haslett defense had a couple of defensive linemen do it. But again, you're talking over 20 years ago now, even with that squad.
Crazy. Crazy. Well, let's get back to the current squad. They have a interesting matchup this week, home against the Philadelphia Eagles. We got a question from X Twitter, so we'll go ahead and throw it up. I think it's a good segue into this conversation. Can this team keep the momentum? The Eagles are going to be coming in mad. Yeah, they blew it on Monday night against the Falcons. It was an interesting play call. And obviously, I don't want to dig too deep into their Monday night loss, but the interesting play call to throw the ball on third down, Saquon drops it in the flat, which you would expect Saquon Barkley to make that catch, cut up field, and lower a shoulder, and probably get the first down. I know a lot of people's fantasy teams were certainly hoping for that as well, but nonetheless, no, this is really interesting because this is a Philly team that is just a year, one full season removed from the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts is a guy who has came up in MVP conversation a lot over the last 2 years. A defense that did enough to get to a Super Bowl. They've drafted a lot of young talent on the defensive side lately. They have a pipeline with the University of Georgia. It seems like now they're drafting Georgia Bulldogs left and right, which you can't go wrong for a team that's been as dominant as Georgia has the last few years. But for as much investment as they've put into that defense with first and second round picks, wow, this is a defense that's really struggling right now, not just against the run, but against the pass as well. They may be without one of their premier players in the secondary. We're waiting for their injury report to officially drop. But Bob, this on paper, our favorite saying on this show, looks like a really good opportunity for the Saints offense to continue some of that momentum with Alvin Kamara, with Chris Olave, with Rashid Shaheed, who's having a hell of a start to the season. But the Saints are down a couple guys on the offensive side of the ball today. So, Bob, let's give the people the injury report, at least on the Saints side, as we await the injury report for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, and we do have an update, a smaller update on the Eagles side, but the full list of Saints inactive players today. In case you missed it, Taysom Hill was downgraded from questionable to doubtful yesterday and from doubtful to out today. So Taysom Hill is inactive. Kalen Saunders, the defensive tackle, inactive. That was announced on Friday. No surprise there. DeMarco Jackson, the linebacker special teams ace, also no surprise. He's inactive. Here are two surprises, at least for me. Rookie wide receiver Bub Means, inactive. Second year wide receiver A.T. Perry, inactive for the third straight week. Now, if you missed my article yesterday, the Saints only used a standard practice, only one standard practice squad elevation, and that was on linebacker Isaiah Stallberg. They did not activate the wideout Equanimeous St. Brown. Therefore, New Orleans is only going to go with four wide receivers today. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, obviously. Cedric Wilson will once again be the third wideout, and undrafted rookie Mason Tipton. However, especially with Taysom out, we could see our first glimpse of everybody's favorite rookie through mini camp and OTAs, the kid from Colorado State, Dallin Holker. So we'll get into how that Taysom's absence especially affects the Saints offense in a minute. On the Eagles side, the significant names, to watch that we were watching throughout the week. Pro Bowl wide receiver A.J. Brown out. He was declared out on Friday. Linebacker Devin White was activated, but listed among the Philadelphia inactives, just a moment ago. So our old Tampa Bay Buccaneer nemesis will be on street clothes facing the New Orleans Saints. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson went through pregame warmups after popping up with a mysterious foot injury this week. Gardner-Johnson went through pregame warmups, and he is listed as active. So it looks like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, C.D. Deuce, whatever his multiple personalities want to be called, he's going to get a chance to face his former coach and Dennis Allen and the teammates that remain in the New Orleans Saints.
For the first time, correct?
Yes.
First time he's battling the Saints since leaving New Orleans. Again, not a topic I want to spend a whole lot of time on, but I remember specifically, and it's one of those things I think in anybody's journalistic career that you remember, I guess just because of the timing and whatnot, at that point, I was writing a lot of the articles surrounding the question marks with Gardner Johnson in New Orleans. And I remember specifically putting out an article. He had missed a mandatory part of training camp. And there was a lot of speculation on whether that was contract wise or whatever, and ended up being a family member passed and he had an excused absence, which everybody kind of took a deep breath and said, okay, well, the Saints are going to figure it out. And then the very next day or 2 days later, he was traded. And I remember that being like well, that's kind of ironic. Like, yes, he had an excused absence.
Well, it was 2 days later, and remember the temper tantrum that he threw in practice. The screaming match, and acting like a petulant child, like we know CD Deuce, CJ Gardner Johnson, Chauncey Gardner Johnson. We have 3 personalities named. I don't know how many more he has, though.
It was just an interesting time to cover it because it seemed like any time that the corner was turned and it was going to get worked out, something else happened. And it wasn't a holdout. Like a lot of people remember writing about holdouts. This was kind of one of those unique situations. It wasn't a holdout. There was hope it was going to get worked out. And anytime there was hope, it was quickly flip-flopped. And I just remember that being weird. It felt like it was like you're typing something up and then you're deleting it. And then you're typing something up and you're deleting it. That's just how it felt throughout that week. But Gardner Johnson will make his return to New Orleans today as an active player. Let's talk about the Saints offense and some of those changes to the Saints offense because of the injury to Taysom Hill. But before we do that, folks, remember it's the most exciting time of the year because football is back and it's here to stay till February. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. Bob and I are playing every single week. I am about to tweet. We do this every week. I don't want to be X'd, so I guess we're still tweeting. I'm about to tweet our picks of the week. So if you want to tail them, by all means, you can. But guys, making picks super easy, super straightforward. Signing up even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple to use mobile app or underdogfantasy.com. Sign up with promo code Bayou Blitz, our promo code. Super easy to remember, Bayou Blitz. And Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Bayou Blitz to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 or older, 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Alabama, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. If you're concerned about your play, please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, you can call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. If you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK or text HOPE NY 467-369. All right. So with that, Bob, I will tweet these picks out so you guys don't have to sit here with a pen and paper and try to remember them. But going back to what we were talking about on Wednesday, Bob, I think some of our picks need to change up a little bit because of this, right? So just to recap, we did pick Demario Davis higher than half a sack. We believe Demario is going to get his first sack of the season. That's great because that is a 3-time multiplier if that hits for your picks. So you're going to be making some money just off of that. We also liked Alvin Kamara for higher than 29.5 receiving yards with the injury to Taysom Hill. I think that is another one that definitely needs to be smashed today. And the Saints are only have 4 receivers active on the roster today. Expect Kamara to be moved around that offense.
Yeah.
And then finally, this is one for me that I have been picking weekly because I feel it's low. And especially this week without Taysom Hill, I think it's low again. Remember, we're seeing Taysom line up in the backfield, especially in the first quarter, a lot the first 2 weeks of the season. So I got to look. But the last time that I looked on Underdog, the higher or lower for Jamal Williams rushing yards was 17.5. I like the higher on that. I don't think he's going to sit there and get a ton of carries. But I do think, especially if the Saints need some power running late in the game, if Kamara's going to be split out, if Kamara's going to be used in the offense as a receiver more, you got to rest up a little bit, and you got to use the guy that you're paying a lot of money to be an aggressive between the tackles runner. Bob, any problems with those picks?
None whatsoever. And I'll start with what you said about Jamal Williams. We know Alvin Kamara is going to be the focus of this offense. I agree with you that Alvin. I expect Alvin to be used more as a receiver than we've seen through the first 2 weeks. More targets because he has such a advantageous matchup advantage over those Philadelphia linebackers. Nakobe Dean, athletic. Zach Bond, not. If you can get Alvin Kamara on Zach Bond in the open field, advantage Saints. Check that off. But if you're going to move Alvin around, you still need, and we talked about this a lot last year too, you still need a bona fide rushing threat out of the backfield, especially if you do it on early downs. Without Taysom Hill, and Jamal Williams is that threat. As far as running the ball against the Eagles, everybody's done it. They rank 25th against the run. They are dead last in the NFL, giving up 6.4 yards per rush. So this has I highlighted the offensive line versus the defensive front. In my X Factors piece, about 2 hours ago or so. But if the offensive line wins their battle, we know Clint Kubiak wants to run the football, wants to establish the run, wants to be balanced. So you need to establish that tone early, and you do it with Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams. If Jamal is effective, then Alvin's going to be that much better in the passing game because you can move him around, and the Eagles can't necessarily follow him, completely follow him around the formation because Jamal will gash him between the tackles. So that one I love. I'm sticking with what we said on Wednesday about the Demario Davis and the half sack. I think Demario and Willie Gay, highlighted in my X Factors piece, they're going to be key because Jalen Hurts has absolutely killed the New Orleans defense with his legs the last 2 times he's faced them. Jalen did not play when the Eagles and Saints played 2 years ago, but the previous 2 matchups, Jalen rushed for over almost 200 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns, and averaged over 5 yards a carry. Willie Gay was brought in this offseason specifically for this type of matchup. Not only him and Demario when Jalen runs the ball on design runs, but Jalen is so good at breaking containment, escaping the pass rush and making plays with his legs. Then, so we can expect either Demario and or Gay, to be in a position to track Jalen Hurts down. When that happens, that's going to be one of the keys to today's game.
Well, and Bob, we also talked about on Thursday when we were talking about some of these picks, we brought up A.J. Brown. At that point, when we were doing the podcast on Thursday night, we didn't know if he was going to miss the game or not. He made it pretty apparent throughout the week with some of his comments that he was going to miss. Mm-hmm. So we assumed that Devonta Smith was going to have some more targets, have some more looks. So for those people who are also wanting to put some picks on the Eagles, I'm going to pull it up live right quick so you guys know what those higher or lowers are on some of these Eagles wideouts. But you were a little hesitant to take Devonta Smith for the higher than 71.5 receiving yards. Do you still feel that way, or do you think taking the higher of 5.5 receptions is the better play for Devonta Smith?
I think taking the higher for 5.5 receptions is probably the better play. Devonta Smith is a big play threat, no doubt about it. But Marshawn Lattimore's back today after missing last week, and we know how good Paulson Adebo and Alontae Taylor have been. The New Orleans safeties, Tyrann Mathieu, Will Harris, are absolutely balling out. If the Saints can win their matchups up front, with their linebackers and defensive linemen, then you don't have to necessarily drop Will Harris or Tyrann Tyrann Mathieu down into the box, to help defend against not only Jalen Hurts' running ability, but Saquon Barkley's as well. So if you can win those matchups without dropping an extra safety in the box, that means you have over-the-top support. Click on that Dallas game last week between Will Harris and Mathieu. I think they broke up 4, maybe 5, deep balls, or over-the-top plays. Shot plays that Dak Prescott was trying to take. That's what kind of impact that they could have on Devontae Smith. Obviously without AJ Brown out, they know they have to get Devontae in the game. I look for it to be shorter, quicker receptions, hoping that Smith can make a play with his, make a play in the open field with his, talents. So it's going to test the Saints' tackling ability, but I can't see Jalen Hurts getting enough time in the pocket to hit over the top plays. So if the Saints tackle well, and I'm right about how well Tyrann and Will have been playing on that back end and deep support, I can't see a lot of yardage out of Devontae Smith.
Last one for you. We're gonna not talk about the higher or lowers when it comes to Hurts, because to Bob's point, I mean, it's really hard to predict, especially against the Saints, because through his time against New Orleans, he's killed them more with his legs than he has his arm. But last one for you, a trade earlier this offseason sending Jahan Dotson from Washington to Philly, a very rare in-division trade. His higher or lower for receptions right now is 2. He's going to be the number 2 receiver today without A.J. Brown. Do you like the higher or lower for 2 receptions for Dotson? Essentially, is he going to get 3 catches or no?
And I'll tell you, I love Jahan Dotson at Penn State. Figured he'd have a better career at Washington than what he did. But just to show you how much Washington valued him, they not only made the trade, they made the trade to a division rival. And Dotson has not done anything so far. He has 1 catch with 3 targets total. But again, without A.J. Brown out, you're not going to be able to solely target Devontae Smith all day. You're just not, because the New Orleans secondary is just too good for that. We have seen number 3 and number 4 receivers, specifically for Carolina a couple weeks ago. Most of those numbers were in, after the game had long since been decided, but they got some balls late in the game, later in the second half. The same thing could happen with Jahan Dotson today, not because I'm predicting a New Orleans route, but more or less because Jalen Hurts is going to be desperate to find weapons in the passing game. I do expect Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley and tight end Dallas Goedert to be heavily involved, but you need a complementary weapon, especially against a secondary as good as the Saints. So I think I would go higher on the Jahan Dotson reception total today.
Well, I'm typing it out as we speak. These are our picks of the week. Are you ready, Bob? You ready to give the sign off before it hits the Twitterverse? Our Bayou Blitz underdog picks of the week for Saints versus Eagles. We have Alvin Kamara higher than 29.5 receiving yards. Demario Davis higher than half a sack. Jamal Williams higher than 19.5 rushing yards. Devonta Smith lower than 71.5 receiving yards. And Jahan Dotson higher than 2 receptions. Bob, we good to send it out to the Twitterverse?
You got my stamp of approval.
We got the stamp of approval. It means we're going to actually submit that on Underdog as well. We're going to do that every week for you guys. So if you win, we win. If you lose, well, we lose too. So we're all in the same. We're all in this together. That was a Disney movie song or something. But Bob, we talked there about the Saints offense. We also talked about the Saints defense when we were referencing those receivers. But I want to circle back to Jalen Hurts, who has killed the Saints with his legs, going back to his NFL debut a few years back. What's the key to containing Hurts? Obviously, a wonderful talent. You could throw on the tape going all the way back to Alabama and Oklahoma. He was a guy that I felt was going to be a great dual threat quarterback in this league. He's proven to do so. This is a Saints defense that historically, under Dennis Allen, has not done well with mobile quarterbacks. How do they turn the corner and maybe turn a page into a new Saints defense here in 2024?
Well, I mean, we mentioned matching not only the athleticism Hurts has, but the athleticism of Saquon Barkley on those off tackle and stretch runs. And Demario Davis, Willie Gay are obviously the key to that. If healthy, because Gay has dealt with that back issue for the first couple of weeks. It would not surprise me at all if Gay got more reps than what Pete Warner gets this week, especially if the Saints go with 2 linebacker sets and an extra defensive back. But another important factor is you have to not only win your matchups up front. I mean, that's a no-duh. Point out of the week, but you have to stay disciplined, and that's where not only when rushing the passer, but while playing the run too. That's something that Carl Granderson has struggled with in his short career. He's gotten better at it, but he still struggles maintaining discipline. It's something that the New Orleans defensive tackles, they got gashed inside a lot during the matchups against the previous matchups against the Eagles that we talked about. Well, New Orleans has 2 new defensive tackles since then, and Brian Bresee and Nathan Shepard. Those guys got to get pushed early in the snap, early in the rep, to disrupt the running plays, to clog the additional cutback lanes, not only inside lanes, but the cutback lanes that Barkley and Hurts like to use. After that, if Chase Young, Cam Jordan, Peyton Turner, and Carl Granderson, you can't take a wide rush lane, to try to get into the backfield, because if you do, and this is how Philadelphia beat them before, if you do, they're going to run right underneath you. Those Philadelphia linemen are just going to push Chase, Cam, and the rest of those edge rushers right on past your pocket, right on past your backfield, and then just hit you with the run right underneath. Both with Hurts and Barkley. So you do have to stay disciplined when you come up. And that's something that New Orleans struggled in those 2 matchups that we talked about. They rushed for over 240 yards in each of those wins, a couple of years ago. And that was with, Hurts, but they had Miles Sanders too. Now, I love Miles Sanders as a back. He's no Saquon Barkley. So the Philadelphia's ground attack is actually more explosive than it was in those previous matchups. But I think New Orleans is more disciplined against the run as well, and we've seen it early in the year. They've been statistically strong against the run. Now the Saints literally blowing people out by halftime certainly helps. So I will acknowledge that. But this defense is only giving up a little bit barely over 3 yards a carry too. To me, that's the mark of a good run defense, of a defense that's winning your battles up front, and a defense that's staying disciplined and tackling well. You have to check off all those boxes. Otherwise, it's going to be a long day against Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley.
And Saquon had explosive start to the season, right? 3 touchdowns in his first game. We mentioned the dropped pass in the flats already last week that really ended up costing them the game, and not the biggest turning point in the game. Obviously, the defense needed to do their job; they didn't. But I think he's going to come out hungry and looking for opportunities to kind of avenge that, get that bad taste out of his mouth. Going back to the Saints offense, we already referenced without a couple receivers. They only have 4 active on the roster today. That offensive line has played extremely well.
Yeah.
I know, before you cut my head off, Bob, I know you're a huge fan of PFF, but right now their highest rated center and guard are both New Orleans Saints, and Lucas Patrick and Eric McCoy. Patrick, he was the guy on that line we didn't really know what to expect. There wasn't a whole lot of expertise on what to expect out of him, especially at this point in his career. What do you make of the interior of the offensive line? We'll get to the tackles, because I think the tackles are playing great, but we were not huge fans of the interior of the offensive line last year. A lot of inconsistencies, especially with the returners of Ruiz and Eric McCoy, but it looks like really both guards and the center are playing some of their best football of their career.
Yeah, and I guess I'll begrudgingly give PFF credit, with the caveat that a broken clock is right twice a day.
And that means we're right twice a day.
Right. And make no mistake, I am broken. But yeah, Cesar Ruiz playing very well. Looking like the 2022 version that earned himself a contract extension. Eric McCoy coming off a down year, but playing like what he is, one of the better centers in the National Football League. And Lucas Patrick, we both like what Lucas Patrick did with the Bears, but we were a little bit concerned during training camp that Patrick, Saldiveri, and Shane Lemieux were battling out for that left guard job, and it felt like Lucas Patrick almost got it by default. Saldiveri got hurt. Shane Lemieux was just downright abysmal. So we were concerned, but Patrick, Ruiz, Eric McCoy, they're all playing really well. Setting up a stout interior pass pocket where very few times is Derek Carr getting pressure right up the middle, right in his face as he's throwing the ball or trying to step up. It's happened a few times, but Patrick especially has been stout. Run blocking. They're giving Kamara those cutback lanes on those stretch plays, the start off tackle. We know Alvin has the best, one of the best, visions in all of pro football. They're setting up those cutback lanes. So when Alvin sees it, he can cut on a dime, back against the grain. When that happens, that's because the backside blocking, the guards, the center, and even the tackle on the opposite side, that means they're doing their job, and they're doing it to perfection. Give Alvin credit for the production, but you got to give equal amount of credit, to the interior of the Saints line. And like you said, we're about to talk about the tackles who have done an equally outstanding job.
You want a great example of how those guards have really influenced the stats of Alvin Kamara single-handedly, and we've already talked about this on the show, but I think it's worth bringing up again, is the screen last week that went, 50-something yards for a touchdown. Great seal on the backside by Lucas Patrick that really gets overlooked in that whole process. It wasn't much of anything. It was just being big and getting in the way. But he really sealed the backside for Kamara to have all that space to run into. And then, of course, props to Cesar Ruiz for conditioning or, whatever, the Saints medical staff is giving these guys, but Cesar Ruiz, stride for stride with Alvin Kamara, which was very impressive. The funny part about that, Bob, though, is like Cesar Ruiz's legs were moving. They were moving fast, right? Kind of cartoon looking. And Alvin Kamara, and this has been Alvin his whole career. You have Cesar Ruiz is running the same speed, and his legs are like cartoon fast, and then Kamara is just kind of jogging, just giving a light little stroll, through the neighborhood. But it's always been like that with Alvin. It's like deceptive. Like you don't realize how fast he is because when he runs, he really doesn't look like he's trying that hard. Which I wish I had that problem. I think a lot of people wish they had that problem because if I had to have a 20, 30, 40, 50-yard sprint like that, I'd be like dead by the time I got to the end. I would be over. They would have to bring me like 4 oxygen tanks. It would have been over for me. But let's talk about those tackles. Fuaga is one of the highest rated tackles in football right now when it comes to not just PFF, but really just any outlet that you want to look at. He's ranking super high. Very impressive for the rookie. I think he deserves his flowers.
Yeah.
But I really think Trevor Penning deserves a lot of flowers through 2 weeks as well. Maybe even more so because of the criticism on Penning coming into the season. Look, a lot of people talk about that second-year leap when it comes to athletes. And a lot of times people say that third year, you really need to be hitting your stride as like, a professional, or if you're kind of like a fringe Pro Bowl player, like that third year is huge. This is a huge third year for Penning on whether he was going to find himself out of the league or not.
Yeah.
And the guy's showing why he was a first-round pick, at least through 2 weeks, very early on in the season. But what are you seeing on tape from Penning that is so different than it was last year or even his rookie season?
Well, first I see better footwork. Footwork is never going to be a strong suit of Trevor Penning's game. It just isn't. But it was not only a weakness, it was a downright liability. Last year before he got benched, and the year before, when he got into the lineup after recovering from injury. But I do see better footwork from him. I see better technique, upper body. We know he has power. But if you have poor technique and or poor footwork, then that power gets nullified. And that's one of the problems that Trevor Penning was having. And I'm seeing him, he's playing with a lot more confidence too, especially as the game progresses. You see him get, we talk about Ruiz, Patrick, Fuaga making downfield blocks. We know Eric McCoy can too. Trevor Penning is getting to the second level pretty damn effectively as well. And I know the naysayers or the wait and sees people are saying, oh, impact, yeah, we know he's a good run blocker. He's performing well there, but they're giving him so much help as a pass blocker. Well, yeah, they are. But NFL teams do that. Every NFL team does that with at least one of their tackles. But the tackle still has to do their job, and Trevor is. I hear Brian Baldinger, and Baldy has done a great job of breaking down, Saints, the Saints offensive line, period. But especially Trevor Talise Fuaga. He's called the Saints a left-handed team. I'll agree with that to a point. They're a left-handed running team. But again, Penning is doing, just like Ruiz, Patrick, and McCoy, Penning is doing a spectacular job on the backside blocks, seal blocks, things like that. And when Derek Carr on play action rollouts, Derek Carr isn't rolling to his left. You don't do that with a right-handed quarterback. Derek Carr is rolling to his right. And yeah, they're getting chips and extra blocks on that, on opposing edge rushers, as they're going to today. But Penning still has to do his job, and he is doing so. Derek Carr has been legitimately sacked one time this year, and that was because interior protection broke down a little bit when he stepped up. Derek Carr has opponents have registered 3 quarterback hits on Derek Carr. Basically hit as you throw, or things like that. Compare that to last year, and I mean, this is a night and day difference. And if you compare it to the beginning of the last year, Trevor Penning was one of those linemen giving up, sacks, hurries, pressures, hits, and bunches. He's not doing so this year. He looks like a completely different player. He looks like a player that's really embraced this change, this switch from the left side to the right side. And you talked about players making the second and third year jump. And you mentioned it often this offseason, Brendan. Trevor Penning only had 7 career starts coming into this year. So you're essentially still talking about a second-year player, if that, even that's a stretch. So yeah, you and I acknowledge many times on this show that Trevor Penning, yes, was playing poorly, but we also preach a little bit of patience. Well, so far anyway, knock on wood, that patience is paying off, the position switch is paying off, and the scheme is paying off.
I think that last part of what you said is really underrated throughout all of this, is what the offensive line's being asked to do under Clint Kubiak compared to Pete Carmichael. The ball's getting out quicker. It's easier, I think. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not in these meetings, but just seeing it play out, I feel like the play calls are not as complex. They're a little bit easier to understand. And I think the biggest thing with offensive linemen is the longer you're asked to sit there in pass protection, the less fun it really is. Yeah. Like, if you can sit in pass protection for 2 seconds, great. I can do anything. I can hold up anybody for 2 seconds. But when you're talking about 5-step dropbacks consistently, which was a lot of the Pete Carmichael system, you're being asked to do a lot. And when you're learning a new position, or you're a young guy like Penning coming into the league, that doesn't benefit you to have to try to hold somebody off for 3, sometimes even 4 seconds with how long the ball was being held on some of those.
Or longer if your receivers weren't getting any separation, right, too.
Which that was a problem for a handful of years for the Saints as well. So you're seeing new developments, if you will, with this team, with this offense. It's very evident through 2 games when you scored 90-something points in 2 games that you're flying a little higher than you were in years past. So with all that, Bob, before we close out and let people go, how do you see this game going? A lot of injuries on both sides, some key players on both sides out. But how do you see this one playing out in the Superdome? And what would be a really big opportunity? I mean, you don't want to look too far ahead in the schedule, Bob, but if you come out with a victory today, you get the Falcons next week and then Kansas City the week after. I mean, when I looked at those first 5-6 games, I said, man, if the Saints go 3-3, they have a good shot. But you're realistically, if you win today, you're looking at doing better than that. So how important is this game, I guess, A, and B, how do you see it playing out?
I still think even with a 2-0 start, and you gave yourself a tiny bit of margin for error now. I still think it's a key game because it's a game against an NFC opponent.
Right.
And we've seen the Saints have missed the playoffs the last 3 years because they've lost out on tiebreakers. And if you go 3-0, that's not only 3 victories. That's always going to be important. That's 3 victories against NFC opponents. Before you go back into your division against Atlanta. And when I looked at the schedule, I thought that a 3-3, 4-2 start was had realistic expectations. But I looked at the week 2 and week 3 as keys. I was like, okay, you have to come out with at least a split against Dallas and Philadelphia, 2 playoff teams for me, 2 perennial playoff teams. They got that box checked off now, so now they have an opportunity to get a little bit ahead of the game. Saints defensively, I love their matchup against. I think that they're going to be able to really contain, if not completely shut down, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Jahan Dotson. The run defense worries me, not because of the way the Saints are playing, but because the history that they've had against Jalen Hurts and against Saquon Barkley. So you have to, and I mean, this is non-negotiable. You have to limit that run early, make Philadelphia feel like, you know what, we're not going to beat the Saints on the ground. We have to mix it up and or completely rely on the passing game without A.J. Brown. So if they can do that early, I really love that. The matchup for the Saints on that side of the ball, because I know the Saints are going to be able to pressure Hurts. Finish. That's the word for today defensively. Finish your plays. Get the quarterback on the ground. Keep the gains to the running gains and the scramble plays to a minimal gain, so that way you can win. You set yourself up to win on 3rd downs and even second and longs. Offensively. Not having Taysom Hill in there is going to affect the play calling and play design a little bit. But Taysom hadn't been heavily used as far as touches go. And you look at the back end for the Eagles. I mean, they have some talent there, but a lot of it is either not playing up to expectations, the veterans, or the young talent unproven and kind of getting victimized. I think Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Alvin Kamara could all have big days as receivers. And I listed Juwan Johnson as my X factor, my offensive X factor, for a reason. If Philadelphia adjusts to guard against big plays to Shaheed especially, but Shaheed and Olave over the top. And they adjust. They put your best linebacker, Nakobe Dean, or a safety on Kamara when he flares out of the backfield. Who's going to cover Juwan Johnson? Is it going to be Zach Bond? Advantage Saints. Is it going to be Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? Juwan has a significant size advantage there. Is it going to be Avonte Maddox? Significant size advantage there. Is it going to be Reed Blankenship? Size and athletic advantage there. So I think the Saints could pass all over the Eagles today if they can protect Carr. And that's where who's going to come out? Are the Saints going to continue their surprisingly terrific play on the offensive front, or are the Eagles, who are really, really talented along the edge and up the middle in their front seven, are they going to finally realize their potential? And therefore, with that being said, I don't think you can pass. You could pass on the Eagles, but you can't just drop back and sling it all day. You got to establish the run game. Again, with as athletically limited as Zach Bond is, if you can pin Nakobe Dean inside, you can run right at these edge rushers for Philadelphia and gain a whole lot of yards. I love the advantage that the Saints have offensively against the Eagles defensively, comparatively to the way both units are playing. I'm going to go Saints in this one, relatively easy, 31-20.
Okay. I like what you said about the running backs. I think that without Taysom Hill, Adam Prentice is going to get a lot more opportunities. I don't think that should scare anybody, right? Prentice had a very good offseason. I think Prentice is a little underrated in this system, right? We haven't been able to see a lot of it because it looks like whatever Taysom Hill is getting a lot of those primary fullback looks. But that Prentice is a guy that is a little bit more on the athletic side as a fullback, can catch out of the backfield, and is proven to be a guy that can be used in a Kubiak-like system. Let me address this in the chat. What's the buzz around Derek Carr in the city now?
Pretty damn good.
He's winning some people back. I think this is a game where Derek Carr could, as you said, Bob, really pass all over the Eagles. The one knock on Derek last year, even when he was playing well, then early into this year, which there's not a whole lot of knocks on him so far early in this year, but the statistical nerds, right, have been like, well, Derek's not throwing for a lot of yards. Well, he hasn't had to.
Right.
But this is a game where I could really see Derek. I mean, when I say a lot of yards, we're not talking about the Drew Brees years where like Drew is throwing for 400 yards a game, which he's in the building today. So maybe Derek is like, well, but got to impress the GOAT. Let's throw for a lot of yards. But I could see Derek getting over 250 today. I could see Derek throwing multiple touchdowns. We didn't include that in our picks today, but we did talk about that Thursday. This could certainly be a game where Derek goes over or higher than 1.5 again. So we'll see. Saints defensively have been playing really well. I do have some concerns with Saquon Barkley / Jalen Hurts. But if you can kind of shut that down early, if you can get up in the game early and force them to pass the ball, then you kind of eliminate that section. But if you don't get ahead early and they're able to run a lot of that read option, RPOs, and really get into a rhythm offensively, that's where I get concerned. But I do see the Saints at home playing good football. Like, yes, don't get me wrong, blowing out the Panthers week 1 at home, that gets everybody in the dome jumping. But going in, whooping up on Dallas last week, being the third team in NFL history to score 91 or more points through your first 2 weeks, there is a newfound hope and belief in New Orleans right now. That place is going to be jumping from the get-go. Drew Brees is being honored today. There's a lot of things in terms of home field or dome field advantage that should be going in the Saints' direction today. So I do think there's going to be opportunities to really throw off that Philly offense. I do think there's going to be opportunities if the Saints can get out and score on the first drive. Plays going to be loud.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a Rashid Shaheed bomb like it has been the first 2 weeks that really gets the place jumping. It could be a long, methodical drive that's capped off by a Kamara touchdown, another Derek Carr, Michael Jackson celebration. It doesn't really matter, right? He might not do that. I mean,
I let him do the Eagles fly this week.
He could do that. That still might hurt his pocket with the NFL. I don't know if the NFL will fine him for that one. I've never been fined $14,000 for doing a dance move. It must be nice to get fined that much and not really think about it.
Right.
But I digress. I like the Saints in this one. I do think it's going to be a little bit tighter. And that's not a shot at New Orleans, and that's not really praising the Eagles either. But when I say closer, like at some point, it's got to come back down to earth a little bit, right? Like you can't just be scoring 40 points a week. And even going back to the 2009 team that did the same exact thing through the first 2 weeks, like they came back to earth a little bit. I see the Saints going higher than their projected points of like 25.5. Like I still see the Saints in that 30 range, especially at home. But I do see the Eagles scoring a little bit. They are way too talented on paper offensively to not put points on the board. So I'm going to take the Saints similarly to yours, Bob. I will take the Saints by the score of 30-24. It's going to be closer, but I do think they separate themselves and the Eagles get like a garbage time touchdown to make it closer than it was on paper, but just enough to get your heart racing a little bit. Look, they gave you 2 weeks where you didn't have to worry about it, guys. Like, this is the Who Dat Nation. We know that historically, heart attacks are a weekly thing.
Right.
So they gave you 2 weeks where you didn't have to worry about it. So maybe, well, I'm not saying you got to get the meds ready. I'm saying maybe the heart pumps just a little bit faster than normal this week and you come back down to earth. So that's where I am with the New Orleans Saints this week. Bob? we have a post-game show we're going to do, but it's not going to be live. And if you're new to the program, it's really easy to catch it. It's going to be available for your Monday morning drive, your Monday morning cleaning up the house after you threw a wild party today, watching the Saints game, whatever you do on your Monday mornings, it's going to be ready and available. Or if you're a night owl and you want to listen to it, right when the clock strikes midnight, it'll be available for you guys. Our post-game show is available wherever you get your pods, whether that be Apple or Spotify, etc. We will come with that post-game show, giving you guys the hopefully some in-depth thoughts. Hopefully another post-game extravaganza, as we've been calling it lately. But Bob, in the meantime, they got about 30 minutes till kickoff. I know people are getting their snacks. They're grilling, and they got their phones out watching us while they grill. But they might need to catch up on some more Saints insight. And I know Bob Rose is the man for that job with his articles and with his brilliant analysis. Where can people find all of your work for today and post-game and moving forward?
Well, I mean, to be fair, and thank you for the compliment. To be fair, it's only brilliant when I'm right, or if the Saints do something against what I suggested and they flop. But you can catch up on all those articles and continue to follow me and the Saints News Network through the week. I post my articles on my personal page as well, Bob Rose on Facebook, at Bobby R 2613 on X Twitter, and all of our articles collectively on the Saints News Network or the SI.com team page. And Brendan mentioned the post game show. Make sure that you're a member of the Bayou Blitz Facebook group too, or one of our affiliated groups. If you want to join in on our live weekly broadcast, if you aren't a member of the group, you can always catch it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else, YouTube, wherever else you catch your podcast. But if you want to be part of our live conversation, you have to be a member of the Bayou Blitz Facebook page or one of our affiliated groups.
For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere. As I get back on the screen, there I am, at BT Boylan. I'm going to throw this out there just because I saw it come across the screen just now. For anybody that was doubting the dome field advantage today, there's a lot more than just Drew Brees in terms of Saints alumni that are up at this game. You're seeing a lot of Drew Brees teammates that are in the building.
Awesome.
To honor Drew Brees, Malcolm Jenkins at the game. Mark Ingram reuniting with Alvin Kamara before the game. He's in the dome as well. This thing should be bumping. And for you guys down there in New Orleans, whether you're at the game or you're watching at a bar, or even if you're at home, I know sometimes that place gets loud enough you can feel it from home. Hopefully you guys feel that energy. Hopefully it radiates through the screen for some of us that are watching it from the couch. And with all that, I hope you guys enjoy week number 3. Join us for the post-game, hopefully, extravaganza tomorrow morning on your drive into work. Or
it'll be either an extravaganza or post-game therapy. That's what we'll call, if the Saints lose at all this season, that's what we'll call our post-game therapy.
So, Bob, did we just become doctors?
We did.
I got to add it to the resume. But guys, I hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you for the post game. Until then, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity, and who dat.